Hi, I'm Lorna Vu, and my current event summary is about the male-dominated music industry, especially in the rock and roll genre. Over the last few decades, women have increasingly been a major component of the creation of music and its history. In the American music industry, female musicians have greatly contributed as composers, instrumentalists, and singers. Yet these women are left out of many awards and distinctions that are instead given to male musicians. This standard practice is especially frequent in the rock and roll genre, as rock musicians are generally viewed as male and the music category is male-dominated. In the music industry, particularly in the rock and roll genre, although some female musicians attain substantial success and fame for their music and musical abilities, they are often overlooked for honors and awards and not granted recognition as much as their male counterparts. The article I chose was written in March 2019 by Evelyn McDonnell. It appeared on a site called Longreads, which publishes and curates writing from personal essays to investigative journalism. Evelyn McDonnell has been writing about popular culture and society for over 30 years. She has written a few books about women in the rock and roll industry and female rock bands. Evelyn is also an associate professor in the English department and director of the journalism program at Loyola Marymount University. Her writings have appeared in many publications such as the New York Times, Billboard Magazine, Spin Magazine, Rolling Stone Magazine, and many others. She has won many fellowships and awards as well. The article is titled "The Manhandling of Rock and Roll History." Its main point is that female musicians do not get the credit they deserve. The male-dominated industry and system disregards women intentionally. Evelyn McDonnell writes about how the music industry is run by men and favors men, particularly in the rock and roll category. She gives examples of how women were overlooked in being granted awards and recognition. She also notes a lack of recognition and credit given to female rock musicians. I will go into detail about that article later. A little history on rock and roll music. It is a genre of music that originated in the 1940s and early 50s. Its origins, though still debated among historians, are from blues, jazz, gospel in the Christian churches, country, and rhythm and blues. Rock music started to spread widely thanks to the invention of the 45 RPM record. Early contributors of rock music were the Gospels. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Fats Domino, he sings Blueberry Hill, Jimmy Preston, Bill Haley, Chuck Berry sings Johnny B. Good, Little Richard, Tutti Frutti, and Jerry Lee Lewis, who's known for one of his top songs, which was Great Balls of Fire. Here are some great photos of Sister Rosetta Tharpe and Little Richard, who is shown here performing Long Tall Sally from a show called Don't Knock the Rock, which was a musical film in 1956 that featured many great performers. This is a list of some great female musicians in rock music. Many of these names and their music are still recognized and listened to today. Here is Lizzie Douglas, known as Memphis Minnie, who was a blues guitarist and a singer from the 1920s to the 1950s. And a little side note here, when I did some research on her, I came across a feature of Memphis Minnie on the Memphis Music Hall of Fame website. And on that page, there was a big logo with the words, Queen of the Country Blues, all capitalized, nice big logo right on top. But right under that were the words, it's been said that Memphis Minnie played guitar, quote unquote, like a man. And I thought that was interesting. The photo on the right is Joan Jett, one of the best rock musicians. Here is Ann and Nancy Wilson of Heart and the great Janis Joplin. About the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It is a music museum and, of course, a Hall of Fame. It was established in 1983, April 1983, mainly by Ahmet Ertegun, who was the founder and chairman of Atlantic Records. It's located in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's an annual induction ceremony held in Los Angeles where about half a dozen to a dozen nominated acts are inducted. And the nominating committee is composed of over 500 rock historians and select voters, and I'll go more into the nomination process later. And as you can see on the shortened list on the right that I compiled, the first group of inductees were all men. Here's a list of some women who were inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame over the years. This is not a complete list, and some of these artists are not in the rock and roll category of music. Aretha Franklin was the first woman to be inducted in 1987, 4 years after the Hall of Fame was established. Stevie Nicks was the first woman to be inducted twice as a solo artist and as part of her band Fleetwood Mac. Janet Jackson is the latest inductee, and when she went up to receive her award in 2019, her acceptance speech ended with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, please, 2020, induct more women. Women make up less than 8% of inductees. The nomination process. To be eligible for nomination, 25 years must have passed since an act released its first recording. Then the artist or group gets on the ballot. To do so, the nominated committee chooses contenders, where each member of the committee chooses 2 artists for induction. The committee conducts an open discussion privately to narrow it down to about 15 nominees. Then the ballots are sent to more than 600 historians and members of the music industry and artists. Fans have recently been able to vote as well, with the top votes getting consideration for inclusion among the nominees. About 5 performers or so receiving the most votes become that year's induction class. And I think it's been a few more performers as the years have gone by. But there are some problems with this nomination process. First, the committee is mostly male. The nominating committee lacks diversity. Billboard magazine said it was too white, too male, too rich, and too old. The nominees sometimes have to be on the ballot several times before winning. It was Janet Jackson's 3rd nomination before she won. However, being on the ballot does not mean that it's closer to winning. Chaka Khan was nominated 3 times, and her band, Rufus, was nominated twice and still hasn't won. So technically she was nominated 5 times. And one of the biggest problems of this nomination process is that the inductees get to vote for other nominations. And since the majority of inductees are white men, they tend to vote for their peers and heroes, which are other white men. The article I used was written by Evelyn McDonald in March 2009, which was just last year. She noted that Janet Jackson was only 1 out of 2 women inducted out of 37 inductees, including members of 5 all-male bands. She writes that in 34 years since the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was founded, 888 people have been inducted and only 69 have been women. She gives examples about how there was a collaboration with the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where there was an exhibit of acts whose instruments would be on display. The exhibit list included only 1 woman. She writes, "People and institutions have to stop defining rock and roll music played by men, especially white men with guitars." With that said, Sister Rosetta Tharpe was not inducted into the Hall of Fame until 2018. She has almost 3 million views on YouTube, and you should check it out. So every inductee gets a vote, and that means every year more and more men vote for other men to be nominated. So Evelyn McDonald says that this institution has systemically excluded and oppressed women. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction is regarded by many as the highest award in the rock music industry. These institutions and museums such as the Met, which is publicly funded, by the way, have cultural power and great influence on what is of historical importance. The accolades can create economic benefits, as the inductees can sell many records and tickets for shows and concerts when they're recognized. These institutions also can inspire future generations. But the problem is, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame seems like a shrine to white men created by white men. They pretend to serve the public, but really tend to award white men. The inductees have the power to provide jobs, but however, the winners are mostly white male performers whose music is usually listened to or created by other white men. Lastly, regarding inspiration for young people, if the only women you're going to see receiving awards on that stage at Barclays Center are Janet Jackson and Stevie Nicks, would you, if you were a little girl, go pick up a guitar? Quote unquote. Meaning, some of these acts inducted are considered the most popular in music, but not of musicianship, such as having instrumental skills and abilities or a powerful or complex vocal talent, and definitely not considered rock and roll. The rock industry and the American music industry as a whole has utilized the standard practice of disregarding female musicians, therefore oppressing women. Many examples of this unequal gender acknowledgement and acceptance includes the frequency of awards or distinctions given to female musicians, the inclusion of women in music exhibits and museums, and the low percentage of inductions into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is considered rock's highest honor. The music and entertainment industry continue to dismiss and overlook female musicians in giving them credit and recognition for their massive contribution to the history of rock and roll. So we can balance out the inequalities of women and men in the rock music industry, or within any issues, by supporting and advocating for women. The injustice needs to be exposed, and we need to support people who speak out about these kinds of injustices and problems. This concludes my current event summary, and thank you for attending my PowerPoint presentation.